I have a condition called facial arteriovenous malformation. This is something I was born with, which causes a large bump in the middle of my face. It's a rare disease where the blood vessels, like arteries and veins, get mixed up and allow blood to flow the wrong way, creating a big blood clot there. Since I was young, I had to go through many surgeries, but each one changed my face more, making it harder to look normal. In school, especially in elementary school, the boys would tease me a lot, no matter how much I tried to hide it. This disorder was always obvious, and it made me feel very self-conscious. I thought I'd never find love or get married, because I believed nobody could love someone who looked like me. That was until I met someone who changed my perspective. My name is Sophia, and I used to feel very negative and had no confidence. Other people saw me that way too. My family, especially my sister Mia, also played a big part in how I felt about myself. Mia is beautiful with double-fold eyelids, long eyelashes, and a perfectly shaped nose. She looks like a doll, and people often compliment her. My parents were very proud of her and would give her nice clothes, shoes, and hair accessories. In comparison, I felt like I was invisible to my parents. They would sometimes say things like it would be embarrassing for Mia to have an ugly sister, so they didn't want me to be around her much. But Mia didn't care about my condition. She always treated me with kindness, shared her toys and hair accessories with me, and defended me when others made fun of me. She was always there for me, and I cherish her for that. However, all my parents' attention was on Mia. They didn't show interest in my achievements, like my grades. If Mia got a 70 on a test, they'd say, "That's amazing, our Mia is smart and pretty." But when I did well, they'd dismiss it, saying things like, "Looks matter more in life, studying won't get you far." If I wanted a dress, they'd tell me it would look good on Mia but not on me, so I shouldn't wear it. When I bought a makeup magazine with my own money, they'd say it was a waste because makeup wouldn't help me. My parents kept comparing me to Mia, making me feel more and more insecure. Mia would sometimes protest their attitude, but that only made things worse. I realized that I had no real place in my family. School wasn't any better. The boys in my class would call me names like monster and say things like, "Don't touch her, you might catch her disease." In middle school, although the teasing wasn't as harsh, some boys would still make faces if I was near them, and I could hear whispers about me. The worst part was when I became the target of a punishment game. The person who lost the game had to pretend to confess their feelings to someone, and I was often chosen. I knew they were only pretending, so I politely say no, but then they go around saying, "She rejected me," and one boy even yelled at me for it. I had turned down the punishment confession, telling them not to get cocky just because it was a joke. They called me ugly, and though it hurt and felt unfair, I started to believe my appearance was like a burden to others. I felt guilty just for existing around them. I didn't have any good memories of boys during elementary and middle school, but once, just once, I did fall for a boy in high school. In my sophomore year, I ended up seated next to a boy who treated me like anyone else. He never made fun of my face or acted awkward around me. Every morning, he'd greet me with a simple "good morning." And even though I knew he didn't have feelings for me, his greeting brought me so much happiness. I started to like him, not because I wanted to date him, but because his kindness was refreshing in a world full of hurt. One day, after thinking about it a lot, I asked my sister for advice. She encouraged me to tell him how I felt. So, I wrote a letter expressing my feelings and left it in his desk. A few days later, when I arrived at school, I noticed my classmates whispering and glancing at me. The boy approached me and asked, "Did you put this letter in my desk?" I nodded, looking at the ground. Then, I heard a tearing sound. He had ripped up my letter, and pieces of it fell in front of me. "It's annoying when stuff like this happens," he said. "What if people start spreading weird rumors? I only greeted you out of politeness. If I gave you the wrong idea, I'm sorry." The class erupted in cheers and applause. Some people said, "Wow, he's brave," while others whispered, "Isn't that sad?" After that, my memory is a blur. I only remember feeling deep shame and guilt. I somehow made it home, but I don't recall the journey. After that day, I couldn't bring myself to go back to school. When my parents found out what happened, they took his side. They said he had every right to react that way. You were out of line. You should apologize. As time passed, they scolded me for staying home over something they saw as trivial. They tried to make me go back, but I just couldn't. In the end, I dropped out and became a recluse. My sister kept trying to reach out and talk to me, but my parents only made things worse. They would yell at me through my door every morning, or sometimes come into my room just to scold me. My parents' words tore at me. They'd throw insults like, "We should never have had you," or "You're such a disgrace," leaving me in a daily spiral of despair, questioning why I even existed. It was my sister who eventually noticed the toll it was taking and reached out to our grandparents on my mother's side. The very next day, they came to hear my story. When they learned about what happened at school and how my parents had reacted, they were furious. They confronted my parents, saying, "We'll take care of her," and took me in. My grandparents didn't abandon me. Even though I was at my lowest, they faced me with kindness, and with their support and my sisters, I slowly began to recover. The desire to end my life started to fade, but I couldn't shake the fear and mistrust I felt toward men. No matter how hard I tried, my grandfather, though, was always encouraging. He'd say, "One day, you'll find happiness in your own way, and it won't need to involve marriage. Just focus on what makes you happy and let go of those who hurt you. They're not worth the space in your mind. We may not have much time left, but you still have so many futures ahead." My grandmother would echo his support, always reassuring me, "As long as you're happy, that's all that matters." She'd compliment me, telling me, "Your skin is radiant, it makes me jealous," or "Your eyes are as beautiful as jewels." My sister visited often, and we passed the time together, chatting, reading magazines, and sharing our favorite cosmetics. Those 3 years of living like that helped me regain a sense of self. Eventually, I found the motivation to study for my high school equivalency diploma, which I was proud to earn. After that, I looked for remote work and began to make a modest income from home. It wasn't much, but it felt like progress after years of hiding away. I still couldn't bring myself to go out, worried about what people might say about my appearance, but I felt like I was finally growing. Then, one day, my parents appeared out of nowhere. They hadn't called or visited since I moved in with my grandparents, but now, they arrived with an announcement. "We found a marriage proposal for you," they declared. "The prospective groom is the son of a wealthy medical foundation representative. He's also had trouble finding a spouse, so they've turned to you. Isn't it great? He's rich and willing to take someone like you, who's been nothing but a burden on society." I was surprised by how quickly things were moving, but my grandparents stepped in to support me. They argued it wasn't fair to make such big decisions without asking what I wanted. My father, however, tried to persuade me, saying, "This might be her last chance. She's been through so much because of her appearance. Why not let her have a chance at happiness?" The picture of the man in the marriage proposal was mostly hidden by his hair, so I couldn't see his face clearly, but I could tell he was chubby and looked a bit unusual. I guessed he was also being pressured into marriage, maybe because he had his own problems. Even if I didn't want to marry him, my parents had already started talks with his family. They seemed wealthy, and my parents would probably push me to go through with it. For my grandparents, Seiko had been there for me through everything. He decided to accept the proposal. "I understand. I'll agree to this marriage," I said. My grandparents' eyes widened, and they hugged me, saying, "You don't have to go through with this." But I told them through tears, "Grandma, Grandpa, I had lost all hope in life, but with you by my side, I've been able to live happily until now. I don't want to cause you any more trouble, so I'll accept. Maybe this really is my last chance." My grandparents cried silently and held me tightly. A few days later, I met the man, Matthew, and his parents. I didn't expect much to come of it. Matthew looked shy and kept his head down. His hair covered most of his face, and his skin looked rough in some areas. His voice was so quiet, I could barely hear him, and he only gave short answers. I thought, is this really the person I'm supposed to marry? Our parents seemed excited and were acting as if everything was already decided. Eventually, they agreed on the marriage, and soon, a fancy apartment with expensive furniture was arranged for us. But our conversations were awkward. He barely looked at me, and the silence felt heavy. So, I tried asking him, "Why did you agree to this marriage, Matthew?" To my surprise, he started rolling up his sleeves. I panicked, unsure why he was doing that. Then he showed me his arms, which were red and inflamed. He explained, "I have a skin condition called psoriasis. It's not contagious, so don't worry. But because of how my skin looks, I've never had a romantic relationship. Some people even spread rumors that I had an STD, which is impossible. I look so unappealing that even my parents avoid me." Matthew admitted that his parents probably wanted him to marry to get rid of him because of his condition. "I'm sorry for involving you in this," he said, bowing deeply, and I noticed redness at his hairline, which he tried to hide with his bands. I reassured him, "Please, don't vote. I'm in a similar situation, too." When he lifted his head, I shared my past with him, including the painful high school experience. Matthew started crying when he heard it. "I can't believe someone would treat you like that. It's awful," he said, outraged on my behalf. Despite his own struggles, he showed such kindness and support that I thought, what a truly gentle person he is. "We're a lot alike, aren't we?" I said, and Matthew blushed and smiled shyly. "I was thinking the same thing," he replied. That night, we shared our life stories, crying, laughing, and comforting each other. From then on, we began to truly understand one another. I researched ways to help with his skin condition, trying different foods and recipes since he didn't like vegetables much. Slowly, he began to enjoy the meals, which helped him get more nutrients and even improve his health a bit. To reduce stress, we tried things like yoga and long talks, and I started seeing Matthew smile more often. He never made negative comments about my appearance. Instead, he blushed and called me cute. Once, I asked him, "Doesn't my face bother you?" He replied, "Not at all. It's part of who you are, and I think it's beautiful. You're so strong and resilient." His words gave me incredible comfort. Over the years, we followed a routine to help improve Matthew's health. His skin condition eased, and the redness on his face became less noticeable. With a healthier lifestyle, he also lost weight, becoming leaner and more confident. When he finally brushed his bangs back, he looked so handsome that I fell for him all over again. His confidence grew, and people at his office began to notice his positive changes. When he finally opened up about his condition, he was surprised by their support. They even told him, "You should have trusted us enough to share." One day, while we were having a quiet evening together, Matthew suddenly asked, "Would you like to have a wedding ceremony?" Although I'd felt more positive since marrying him, I was still nervous about standing in front of a big crowd. When I hesitated, he said, "If you really don't want to, we don't have to." But I thought it might be a good way to thank the people at my company who've supported me. And honestly, I can only even think about it because of you, Sophia. Before, I never have considered it, since I didn't want anyone seeing my skin. But thanks to you, my symptoms have calmed down, and I feel more confident. His gentle words moved me, and after thinking it over, I decided I wanted to try. However, since I didn't have many friends, I only invited my parents, grandparents, and sister. When my sister found out she was pregnant a few months before the wedding, she had to sit it out to be safe, so it was just my parents and grandparents. Although my grandparents were happy to come, my parents were clearly uncomfortable but came to keep up appearances. The same was true for Matthew's parents. He didn't seem thrilled either, but they attended because some of their business associates and friends were there. Both sets of parents acted supportive in front of the guests, saying things like, "We struggled with his illness, but we're proud of his strength." Their fake tears even fooled some guests, who offered sympathetic looks. But Matthew didn't stay silent. When it was time for him to read his letter, he took his stand. He talked about his difficult past, how he'd faced prejudice due to his skin condition, and how meeting and marrying me had changed him. Then, he said, Both my wife and I have had hurtful experiences, even with our own parents. He shared how I'd been mistreated and compared to my older sister, and how my parents never took my condition seriously, despite the bullying I faced. Then, Matthew played a recording of his parents' cruel words, saying things like, "Your skin makes us uncomfortable to look at." His parents were shocked and tried to stop the recording, but the damage was done. Guests stared at them coldly, and my own parents looked equally uncomfortable. After the ceremony, many guests showed their support, saying things like, "You've endured so much, and we'll keep supporting you." However, the fallout was significant. News spread that Matthew's parents, who led a nonprofit for people with disabilities, had mistreated their own child. They faced public backlash and eventually had to step down from their positions in the organization. It was later revealed that my parents had accepted a large dowry to marry me off to Matthew, which led to them being called beasts who sold their own child for money by those around them. Instead of using the dowry wisely, they squandered it on their own selfish desires and recklessly invested in stocks, which resulted in significant losses. Ultimately, they found themselves over $200,000 in debt for more than the amount of the dowry they had received. When they had the audacity to ask for our help, we firmly refused. Even after they came knocking a few more times, we decided to move away and change our phone numbers. Now, Matthew and I are living peacefully together. I truly believe that our meeting was destined. Despite a rocky start, marrying Matthew has made me feel incredibly blessed and happy. Thank you for watching until the end. I hope to see you again in the next video.